And welcome back to the Dominance Academy. I'm your host, Mr. Justin. Thank you for joining us again. I know I've been on a bit of a hiatus for a little while, but it's for good reason. Doing a lot of research and building a lot of great stuff behind the scenes. And that'll be coming out towards the end of the summer. And I've been on a long quest of trying to find submissives to talk to. And you'd be surprised at how difficult this is because they tend to be very shy and private people. So I was elated when I talked with Ava here about coming on my show and talking about being a submissive and her years of experience and what she's been doing and the things she's been building. So tonight, I do have a submissive here with me. All right, her name is Ava, and she is the founder of the House of Three Rivers. She's a writer and coach in dominance, submission, polarity, BDSM, kink, and conscious power exchange dynamics. With over 30 years of experience within BDSM, kink, and the adult industry, Ava works as an educator and community organizer as a recognized leader within the BDSM community. She is the founder of the House of Three Rivers, one of the only female-led BDSM houses in the country. And she personally held every seat at the table, dom, sub, submissive, and currently as her master's slave. So welcome and thank you for joining me here tonight, Ava.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
Yeah, so I appreciate you contacted me. I put that notice out on Substack quite a while ago. and so I was really elated when you had got back in touch with me because like I said, it's really difficult. Most submissives are kind of a shy bunch. So
Till you get us all together and then we don't shut up. So.
That's right. Well, yeah, but like I said, like when we talked before, because folks, I had joined Ava on her Substack during a live where she interviewed me, so we're kind of doing a full circle here, and so I was able to talk about me and being a dom and what I do, and so now we're kind of paying it forward and pulling this around, and we can talk about what she does. So, so first, I kind of want to get a little bit about your past. Okay, your history. And so because you've been in this like far longer than I have, so what did BDSM look like when you started, and what's changed the most like since that's begun?
That's a good question. It's the BDSM community 30 years ago. I mean, I basically, found my first kink events and, kinky people, started meeting like real life kinky people when I was probably 17, 18 years old. I was in the adult industry. I was a neurotic dancer at the time. And there's kind of a Venn diagram there, right? You meet all sorts of different kinds of people. And learn what people are into, and people can kind of speak freely to you in a way that maybe wouldn't happen in a corporate world or if I had gone to college right away or something like that. So I learned a lot about people's desires and their secrets and where people go, and people very willing to share things that they may not share with somebody else. So back then, I mean, that was before FetLife.
Right. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, FetLife is a website. It's a huge like forum style website for tons and tons of kinksters. It was really, really good a number of years ago, like until the scammers kind of found out and they're like, oh, I can promote my so-called sex work through this, or my massage service, or my OnlyFans, and it kind of ruins the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, and then you put on top of that, after 50 Shades came out, and then just everybody flooded on there.
Everybody
is now has kink fever. So it's evolved and it's changed a lot. It's basically Facebook for kinky people,
Right.
um, leaning more towards the BDSM side of things, I guess, depending on what it's showing you, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so, there were BDSM clubs back then. Um,
And for those that don't know, what is a BDSM club?
I can look like a lot of things. There are dungeons, public dungeons. The ones I was in New Orleans at the time, and so the one place that I knew about was actually a floor, the upper level of, I think it was like a 3-story swingers club. So if you did find BDSM, it might be in a section, of a swingers club or something like that.
It's like the swingers club,
I
and
just
it's like
walk in and see a
there.
swing.
This is where like the weirdos are. We'll just kind of put them in the corner, let them play around.
They're doing weird there, yeah. Um, and it is kind of like that. I mean, that was much more widely acceptable back then.
Yeah.
And kink and BDSM was something that, even in my world, that was wide open. It was still something that was kind of whispered about. It was harder to find. Um, and what I didn't know, because I was in my 20s and new to it, there was so much I didn't know because I was new. Just like somebody who's entering in this in their 40s would be like, where do I go? I don't even know where to
Hmm.
start. That was me in my 20s, my early 20s. So there were back then houses, just like I started, but it was more of like an old guard leather community type structure,
Right.
more,
And
more.
for those of you that don't know, the old guard is the very beginnings of the BDSM scene in the United States. It goes back to World War II, with soldiers coming back from the war and missing the organization, structure, hierarchy, and brotherhood found in the military, and they decided to kind of formulate that here, and then it, like, kind of fused with the gay community, or like it was born of that, and so these two things kind of fusing together created this the foundation of the BDSM community.
Hmm. Yeah, so it's strange to think that that was floating around out there and comes from that history.
Mhm.
Mm, I know it was somewhere, but I didn't know where it was yet. So a lot of it was just meeting people and running across somebody who would tell you that's what their interests were, and then um, so there was a lot less resources back then.
Oh
You
yeah, of course. Maybe a few books here and there, and that's it.
Yeah, a few books.
And they were
And
hard to find. It's not like there was Amazon.
there was no Amazon
Right.
either. There was no social media. There was nobody to ask.
Mhm.
Um, so it really was just word of mouth and you didn't know if what you're hearing was real or trustworthy, and there was no way to cross-reference that except to ask for somebody else. Ask somebody else if, is this true? Is this a thing that, happens? How do I trust this person? There was, at least in my young world, there was no such thing as vetting, or now within those houses and those private spaces there was a lot of that, much more actually than there is today. Now you can just go online and, hey, do you know this person, can you give me a reference, and it was easy. But back then you had to like prove yourself in a community. You had to be let into a certain group, which took, if you're a dominant back then, you had to start as a sub and work your way up a little
Mhm.
bit more than you have to do today. There has
Is that what you had to do? Because you said that you've played all the roles. So did you start at the bottom like that as well?
I wasn't really able to find those houses back then.
Right. Okay.
Too, too young, too inexperienced and I was living my best life in my 20s.
Yeah. So what's something that between then and now that that what do you think's changed the most since
Probably,
when you first started?
being able to have online access to resource
Sure.
information, to have the whole of the internet as a resource. And now AI is just, you can, instead of searching all over the internet like a, maze, coming across most pieces of garbage, you can just ask
Right.
ChatGPT.
Say, hey, search on the web, find me munches in my area.
Yeah.
And it'll just boom, like, yeah.
What are
And
the
you kids got it easy. Your kink comes so easily now. Your kink access, anyways. So
yeah.
at what point did you realize, it might have been like after your 20s, but did you realize that this just wasn't a phase of yours, but it was a defining aspect of who you are?
hmm I think it was, I knew in my teens, I knew that the things that I was interested in and aroused by, was definitely, I was doing weird things with Barbies and GI Joes,
Mhm.
um, long before I was ever a dancer. Probably be,
It's like, honey, why did you tie your Barbie to a tree with no clothes on?
yeah. Why are you so happy right now when we played hide and go seek that, I found you and you're still just like giggling and running away? Like,
Uh-huh.
um, yeah. And again, likely that the reason why I jumped into dancing so much and that was just an option for me is because I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll get naked in front of like thousands of people, like zero
Right.
problem. Um, and we can talk about whether, that industry should or should not, be, but that's a whole different story. I mean, it was
Right.
available and I did it. So, it was really after I got out of dancing and started living in the normal world after that. I was in New Orleans for Katrina, and that kind of gave me an opportunity to take a step back and reassess my life. And, do I really want to continue living like this? And I was creeping up on my 30s, and I'm like, okay, I think this is a good time to stop doing that.
Mhm.
And, I had been a dancer all my life. So besides from working in my parents' restaurant when I was a kid, I didn't have many transferable skills. So I did what a lot of sex workers do when they graduate from that and got it back into hospitality and started doing that. And which is still more open, there's more open conversations and that kind of thing. But I immediately had to hide that I hadn't had any previous jobs before that.
Of course.
And so I did a lot of listening. I didn't want to be outed or anything. It's easy to learn, well, easy-ish to learn how to be a server or a bartender or something. But it's still not something that you want to put on the, you know, front page of or on your name tag, right? Because there was people when they find out that you did that, act really weird. They
Yep.
see you in a different way, and it can affect your job and things like that. So I started hiding and started feeling really uncomfortable with that. I didn't love it. And that's almost like knowing that I had to put that whole part of myself on a shelf and hide it. I just never sat well with me.
And that's something that's really common. Well, I would say like amongst lifestyle people, but also, well, I think just everyone when it comes to sexuality. So within the vanilla world, but even those that are entered into the kink world, there's a tremendous amount of shame that is brought about. And I'm just really thankful to be raised by a couple of hippies. We were just naked all the time. And so I was just very used to bodies. Like there was no shame involved with sex.
Mm-hmm.
And it was talked about like it wasn't his thing to be like kept in a shoebox in the top of a closet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't get to like crazy details, but just the general idea of sex was not this taboo thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but shame is big. So, but when you described your past, it was like sort of like a kinky overview. But I guess more of what I'm getting at is when did you realize that submission was an
Mm-hmm.
aspect of you? Like, was there an event, like some kind of situation where you're like, oh shit, like I really like this. That
Mm-hmm.
really speaks to me. What is that?
Yeah. I think it was from being a dancer, and weirdly enough,
Mm,
um, guys very seldom would ask you to be submissive, but there's almost a submissiveness to it when you take clients. You're doing what they say.
sure.
I had a private client that I was with for 5 years. And I mean, when he called, you're there. You do exactly what he said, and it was, uh, you know, a compensation thing for sure. But it was like I didn't mind it. I like
Hmm.
being there when he's just like, I need this and this and this and this, and it's like, yes, sir, um,
Right.
absolutely, and right away, and you drop everything else in that moment, and your whole job is to keep that person happy and
Sure.
fulfilled. And even down to little things, driving them home if they had too much to drink at the casino, or like, I mean, you're like honestly taking care of their entire life. Um, and so it gave me a little bit of that. But then also there were times that, people paid me, to dom them, to be like a dominatrix. And
Right.
I thought it was so, that was easy. That I could
Hmm.
do, that I had a lot of practice in. Very seldom were guys like, I want you to be a submissive, but guys are absolutely like, I would like you, to wear this and step on my balls. Like I'm just like
Hmm.
100%. I'm here for it. Um, so that part was very easy to me, but it was strange watching them able to, and these were powerful, people and politicians and CEOs and all sorts of things. And I
Oh
thought,
yeah.
how crazy is it that they're able to hold both of these parts of them together and feel comfortable and just completely drop in. And it was freeing, and they could let go of their day.
When
And
you first witnessed that, was it a really like eye-opening thing for you? Or did you say like, holy shit, like this guy is this, and he's just completely dropped into this subspace as a
mhm,
seemingly completely different person?
completely different person to be
Yeah.
able to see that
But
transfer.
but was that shocking for you?
It was interesting in almost like a psychological way. I was fascinated in
Right.
how it happens. Some of them had obviously been doing it a long time. They were
Yeah,
very
yeah.
familiar and comfortable in their own skin doing
That's
it.
great.
Zero problems with it. We're doing it in a safe space with me. That amount of trust that was given to me in that
Mhm.
situation
Oh,
was
yeah, that's huge.
powerful feeling to be able to be having somebody's psyche and their safety in your hands for a certain
Right.
amount.
Yeah, that's I never get tired of that.
No.
Never, ever. So I always find it astonishing, beautiful, amazing, incredibly intriguing because the presentation of that dropping,
Mhm.
is different. I mean, it's all within, like, a certain bucket, but the way it shows up is different depending on each person,
Mhm.
and, it's incredibly interesting. And
Mhm.
then, like, the pathways that kinda get there are unique to that individual. Unless
Yes.
they're just very used to it and they know how to kind of bring them their experience, they know how to, like, bring that out. Like, they can just automatically just switch on.
Yeah.
Um, but other than that, like, it's just interesting to see the pathways and all of it. I never tire of just seeing someone's submission and that handing over of trust. Like,
Mhm.
it's just a wild experience.
And no matter what experience, like what expression that comes to, some people could drop in easily. You could tell it was just, something that they were able to do. It was
Mhm.
almost more beautiful to see the ones that struggled with it a little bit,
Yeah,
you
like,
know,
they wanted it, but they were scared.
with the
Yeah.
scared questions.
Nervous, yeah, they were
Mhm.
the right, and that has to do with the shame, just their own conditioning, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So to
Mhm,
be able to say somebody, be like, I see that there's fear and shame here. Like that's mine now.
mhm,
Like, give that to me. And
absolutely.
just that permission that somebody, giving somebody that permission, just be like, okay, all right, I'm
Mhm.
like, got you. And they're just,
So, are you
okay.
actively dominating or you're completely submitted to your master right now?
Well, it's complicated. So I
It's
went,
complicated.
it's new, I'll tell you. But so I remember I began thinking to myself, like, I want that. I want to experience
Right,
that.
you don't wanna be managing.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, I want to be able to experience this thing that I'm able to give other people. And so that's when I started seeking more DS dynamics with
Mhm.
people. Um, and then having to sort out, real life compared to what you've read in the book, and all that stuff. Like, and actually finding it's very difficult to find as a submissive somebody that you can trust to actually lead you. It's easy to find a scene to do where you're that way for a couple hours, kind of like those men were.
Yeah.
But be able to find a relationship built around that takes a lot more.
Oh
Takes a lot.
yeah, yeah. So folks, what we're describing here is there's a difference in the lifestyle versus like I guess like I wouldn't call them like the hobbyist because there are people who just do scenes but still take it seriously, but they only engage with that part of their life in certain instances throughout the week or month or whatever. They that's just maybe that's all they like or that's all they time affords. And so they'll go to a dungeon, they will have a play partner. Maybe it's a new one that they kind of like cycle through. They just kind of like meet and they're like, hey, they discuss, negotiate, and do their thing. Or there's like a recurring play partner. And it's sort of like friends with benefits, but for the kink community. And
Yeah.
and then there's the people who live this, and this is like for me, this is for you now, and it's a different thing because you're in this state 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're saying this is my new lifestyle. This is my new acceptance of self, promise to whatever, adherence to something, and this is the way I want to be all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a totally different commitment. And in my experience, very
Yeah.
life changing situation. Maybe we can get into like your views on like the spiritual aspects of it, but
Mm.
so just real quick, like touching back on your history again a little bit. When you were learning, okay, did you find that like so you kind of had your first introduction in your 20s?
Mm-hmm.
As you learned, were there things that you had to unlearn?
Oh yeah, there's a total unwinding.
Yeah.
All of the social programming that we've.
Oh, no, no, no. I mean, like things that you thought was like BDSM, and you're
Oh,
like, oh, this, I'm doing the thing, and then you're like, oh, now that I have more knowledge and experience, like, fuck, what I thought I knew was completely incorrect.
oh yeah,
So were there things like that you had to
like,
unlearn, whether it's like
yeah.
a certain belief, perception, feeling, activity, what?
Mhm. Um, One of the biggest misconceptions I think a lot of submissives have, especially when they're new and especially if they're seeking a more 24/7 dynamic, is that DOMs aren't all knowing gods. Like, they're just human beings that are fallible and they make mistakes, and that's okay. And they're learning stuff too along the way. And I wish I had known back then how to use my words better.
Mm,
You kind of have this misconception that everything is just yes or, and that you don't have a voice, you don't have an opinion on anything. But that kind of self erasure doesn't give DOMs a whole lot to work with. If you're not a whole full version of yourself,
sure.
then they're building outwards from a shell or from a version of you that isn't real. Um,
Yeah, or like not even a like a fully presented self. It's just like a fraction of you.
mhm,
I've noticed that with those that have like a very high people pleasing thing because they do that in just regular life,
yeah.
right? So if you got like a girl who is like very high in people pleasing, much of her personality and identity is kind of like shoved into the back burners
Mhm,
because it's all about making sure everyone's okay, making sure everyone's like that you're acceptable, that you're performing well, and like if that's all right, then who I can relax and things are good. I'm not being criticized, rejected, or anything like that. And so it's I've noticed that it can be very similar to that, like
yeah.
that same like sort of people pleasing. Here's just a fraction of who I am, just enough to be here,
Mhm,
right? But
mhm.
nothing of actually who I am, the depth of who I am.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any kind of personality thing that you have, good or bad, just gets amplified through BDSM. It
Oh
just
yeah.
spotlight, microscope, all of it right on it. So if you're a people pleaser, if you're a perfectionist, if you're, performative, if you're afraid, if you're, all of those things, you just can't hide it. It'll make itself evident, through your actions, because if you are playing submissive for
Mhm.
an outcome, it will be exhausting.
Oh
Like that
yeah.
takes your energy away instead of giving you, like, if you're kind of in alignment, if you're have all your parts integrated, if you're really like flowing with the other person and communicating well, then it's super energizing and powerful. But yeah, if you're playing a role, you can't keep it up forever. One day you're gonna crack and you're gonna be like, you know, yeah,
Yeah,
you're
something's gonna give. And
something goes.
that what you described really separates DOMs that know what they're doing and those that don't, or know what they're doing but for nefarious reasons.
Yeah.
So someone could, so like a girl, I usually refer to these things in the heteronormative sort of way. So, forgive me, whoever might be watching this. We all know that power can go swing any direction. But so a girl could come to me with people pleasing, like heavy people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a nefarious nature, I would see that and exploit it
Mm-hmm.
for my own personal, like my ego, to stroke my ego, to feel more powerful, to get more pleasure, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I would extort her, right? And that absolutely happens.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely not like just some fantasy I'm making up on the spot. This happens in the community.
All the time, more often.
But for someone who knows what they're doing and can see that and goes, okay, I see that. I know that I could exploit that, but how can I turn this into something that can expunge that from her?
Mm-hmm.
How can, like, so I'm going to find out, where did that even come from in the first place? Let's start just not like peeling it apart, like, all right, we're going to sit down and have this psychotherapy session, but just like over time, asking some questions,
Mm-hmm.
exploring, and slowly try to find the root of that and go,
Mm-hmm.
there's that old pain,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
then slowly try to kind of like, what they call, like, reverse engineer, okay? Because then the people pleasing can then turn into service, and that's
Mm-hmm.
like totally different, right? Because it has to do with the intention mentality behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
so if someone is performing service properly, they're actually very present with like their whole self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about like hiding and making sure you're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think with a good knowledgeable dom, he can transform that aspect of her,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think like that really makes a difference of the experience of everybody. um, and it also helps if the submissive has a certain element of self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem too, of just being so green, that if like that green sub with, say, just for example, that people pleasing issue, plus a nefarious knowledgeable dom, that is a perfect storm. You
And
know what I'm saying?
it's more common than not.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, because the nefarious dom has everything depends on her submitting correctly.
Mhm.
And if she's human, if she makes mistakes, or what, that nightmare scenario for a sub, and oh my god, he's finally going to see me, and what if I'm
Reject me.
I'm
Yep.
with, he's
I'm no
going
good.
to,
Yes.
then it's a character flaw on her. Why
Mhm.
can't you do this? Why are you bratting? Why are you, that is what eventually will come of that. And that's incredibly psychologically damning, because you're damaging to a sub, because they're already, they've just had their worst nightmare exposed and seen, and they were criticized for it. So then they try harder and
Yep.
harder.
That's right.
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
shout out real quick to my girl. You can see her in the chat, Ilya. I see you, kitten. Thank you for stopping by. And thank you for the well wishing. So, yeah, so we're talking about submission now, how has your personal definition of submission evolved over the 30 years that you've been in this? Because I'm sure you had this idea, like once you like past your 20s, or once whatever whenever you came to this understanding of like, oh, that's submission. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
To now, like
Mhm.
what's the difference between that?
One of the main things that I've learned is that there's no right way to do it. For
Mm,
it'll look different in every single dynamic and relationship that you're in. There's no right way. Now there's a more thoughtful way.
mm,
There's more, a level of self awareness that comes with it. Um, I would say that the more self awareness that you have, instead of um, for you to be able to use this as a growth tool, um, as opposed to the erasure route, which is I think is a lot of what people who just start off think it is. Like, he's just gonna control everything. I don't have to make any decisions. I'm gonna let him lead me, and we're gonna have some hot sex, and he's probably gonna choke me, and it'll be great. And there's so much more to that.
mhm.
So there's a practice that I do that I wish I had done a long time ago. Um, One of the things that, you'll agree to anything if you want it bad enough. And there's somebody who has all the right words and all the right terminology, and they look like they know what they're doing, and they have that kind of presence that, you know, that masculine presence that just kind of melts you. But without that self awareness, um, you'll agree to anything. So there's a couple practices I do. It's almost like a contract when you enter into a BDSM relationship. I remember thinking after signing a contract with my ex, sir, that if I had known myself a little bit better, um, the misconceptions that I had leading up to it were, if I just perform correctly, if he's happy all the time, as long as I'm trying my hardest or whatever, and looking back over that contract, I wouldn't have agreed to any of that. It would have looked completely different. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make my own contract with myself first, that I can bring into a relationship and say, this is who I am. These are my desires. These are my non-negotiables. This is what my history brings into this. These are my triggers. These are, this is everything that you need to know about me to be able to build outward. And then just like revisiting that once a year. You have a couple more
Sure.
experiences, or maybe you get in a new dynamic, or something changes, and you're like, oh wow, something that I thought was off limits before is now totally on the table, but in a different way with a different person. And
That's right.
um, so yeah, I wish I had that that knowing that you can actually be your whole self. Yeah, I wish I had known that in the beginning for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and the
And I
more
think that's probably really common, like amongst new subs, is that, like you were saying, like they're like, oh, I can just come in, I can turn off, just let him do whatever he wants, and basically kind of just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best.
yeah, yeah,
And sometimes it works out
very
fine that way. Sometimes it does, and a lot of times it doesn't,
mm-mm. Yeah,
because
you're not aware.
the well, the also the reality is that there's a lot of doms that are not educated. Like, they don't know what they're doing. There's and the thing is that this is something that one of my teachers told me. It was actually in when I was living in the Shala monastery, my sifu, and sifu doesn't mean master, right? It's just like teacher or father or something like that. He said, "Be mindful of anyone who calls themselves a master."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I'm a master guitar player, I'm a master chef, I'm a master this, master that, because it's like, he's like, those that really are, they're just lifetime students.
Yes,
They're
yeah,
constantly in the state of studentship, constantly emptying their cup and learning new, empty their cup, learning new. And they go through life this way. And others might regard them as a master, but they themselves are not like, I'm the fucking high, mighty know it all, you know? And I think that really makes a difference, right? And in this as well, because when someone, when a Dom says or thinks of themselves in these ways, thinks of themselves as this all knowledgeable, I know everything, I'm in full control. That's a really dangerous thing because they've got blinders on. Because we're not omniscient. There's no chance of that.
Mm-mm.
And so I think it's really important as like a vetting tool, I think, for subs to kind of get a feel through conversation. Are they in a constant state of learning? Are
Yeah.
they always reading? Are they always researching? Are they always talking to people, experimenting when they can? Uh, and just basically having the spirit of studentship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really makes a big difference because it's like when someone sets down their books, and takes off their I forget the name of it, but there's like a specific name for that square hat that university students wear. And they take that off, then they're really just saying, I'm done learning.
Right.
And that it could be ego, it could be laziness, right? And
Mhm.
it's just like, well, we can't really be following somebody who's like that.
Right. That's a red flag for
Right.
sure.
Because it's like if he's not on this spirit of improvement, how is he going to be justifiably guiding you to do that?
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah. What happens when I, do something that seems sideways or something? And it's, if you're not in that curious mindset of just learning all the time, it's like, how are you going to learn me? How are you going to be able to guide me in something when a life crisis happens?
Mhm.
Or, when something, big life events happen, it's like if you know it all at that point, and it's, yeah, you're completely right. And nowadays anybody can put up a FET profile and, you have to pick a BDSM identity, right? And it's so easy to call yourself a Dom and there's information is so easy that you feel like you scanned the internet a few times and, then you've got all the tools and it's not the case.
Mhm.
I mean, people are complex and I would find too that, the people who are in the community that are, I would regard as masters are, it's because they've been named that by other people. They are humble and they've helped people and they're leaders in their community and they donate their time to help others and they are those elder, you know, when my master and I had the conversation of whether or not we're going to go DS or MS, um, we sat there and talked for a long time about the difference. And I was like, well, the main difference is that, that's how I see you. If you don't see yourself that way, I mean, it's just how I see you. You
Mhm.
have that,
Now,
that,
for the folks at home, like DS, we're talking Dom sub, and MS is master slave. So,
mm-hmm.
just real quick, like, what's the main difference between those besides perception?
I mean, for me, it was almost just that. Almost anybody can call themselves a Dom, but he's proven to me over and over and time again this deeper and wider level of capacity. He's built a container for our lives that I trust and that I can rely upon and lean on
Mhm.
it. And he's done his own work outside of our relationship. It's just the amount of self work and self reflection and humbling of himself over and over again. He's really done some fantastic thing that not a lot of people have done with their lives.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that for those that want like a generic answer, from
Mm-hmm.
my understanding, is that the DS involves negotiation,
Mm-hmm.
whereas the MS does not.
Mm-hmm. That is a good, yeah, it's more of a,
So a submissive in a DS relationship can say, hold on a second. I have some questions. I have some comments. I have some input that I
mm-hmm.
would like to add to this scenario, to this perspective, to this scene, to this relationship we have. They have a weight and they have a voice that has weight. Right. The master slave is basically saying the general context here is you're entrusting you're entrusting this other person with everything. I
Mhm.
trust you so much that I don't even need a voice.
Yeah.
And
Here I
it's a tremendous amount of trust.
Yeah, it's once you've already done the negotiations,
Mhm,
voiced that you've taken a topic and you've turned it over and over and over, and it's been hit by stress and it's been tested, and then we go back and we've tried it again, and we've had ruptures, and we've gone through repairs and all this stuff, and there, yeah, after a certain time, it just felt appropriate. I'm like, you've got it,
mhm,
and perceptive enough to where, I mean, if eh, I can't imagine many scenarios where I would really be like, I gotta cut it. That is really going in the wrong direction here. He can just read it.
mhm.
I mean, not certainly I would if I needed to. I mean, while it's master slave, this is also real life. If, something happens and he's missed it for whatever reason, he would want to know. Um,
Yeah,
so
like I said, we're not omniscient gods.
yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate knowing some
Mhm.
stuff. Can't know everything. So there is that.
Um, Real quick, this is my friend Peggy. She said I would like to speak with Ava. Peggy, what you can do is you can email me, and then I'll just put you in direct contact with Ava, and you guys can take it from there. Okay?
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Peggy's great.
Nice. I'd love to talk to you, Peggy.
Yeah. Um, so so what do you think? Now we're talking about like the different types, how it shows up, and so on. In your opinion, like for you, your experience, what's the difference between submission as a practice and submission as an identity?
Mm. And that kind of goes into the more spiritual aspects of it.
It
Uh,
does. And I think
It's,
also the difference between like the DS and the MS,
mm-hmm,
right? Because like I feel like the DS, there's a wide range of how it can show up.
mm-hmm,
And but it's still within like this, like this is a practice, this is like a life practice of mine.
mm-hmm,
When it goes into MS, I think that's when it starts becoming identity.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, I am a
More,
submissive, So
mm-hmm,
what are your like personal feelings on this? Not kind of like making definitions for the lifestyle.
mm-hmm. It's funny. I really identify as a sadomasochist, right? So when I do submit, when I say I'm his submissive, that's a big deal for me. That's a process that is a level of trust and understanding that frees my soul up, my not just my mind, and it doesn't just make my body relax, but it feeds my soul to know that I am able to let a certain amount of control and um you know most people live their lives every day with both hands on the wheel. We run our businesses. We a lot of times women are just living in their masculine all day.
Mhm.
We're chasing our kids down. We're running from one thing to another. We're leading teams. We're doing all these things. And, it takes a certain amount of, social deprogramming to be able to say, to be able to put that kind of trust in somebody and be like, oh, you've got this certain aspect of not only my life, but your life, of our life. Um, it is a completely different way about going into relationships. To be able to look at your partner and to say, you know, like, I trust you. Maybe they're doing something that you would do not the same way. Maybe you took a different route to the grocery store than you would have taken or whatever. But to be able to set aside and like all the correcting or all the,
Yeah, just the constant managing.
constant managing of
Mhm.
another person's emotions, of another person's, schedule, of your own life on top of that, to be
Sure.
able to that kind of like deduct it away a little bit and you can let go, then there's so much more space for you to do the things that you actually want to do. And for a lot of people who are just constantly, white knuckling it through life, they don't know what they like to do.
Mhm.
It's almost like childlike in the way that you can relax and just, you notice things that you wouldn't normally notice, you know?
Sure. Yeah,
Like
this is what I enjoy a lot is when a woman goes into subspace, and I regard subspace sort of like a lake, right? And either sometimes they're like ankle deep, they can go in up to their knees, their waist, or all be completely submerged. And this is like when they're like in full throes, ecstatic, out of body experience, very little consciousness type subspace. Um, and then the ankle deep is like the performative, like, yes, sir. You know, but she's thinking about the groceries, the job, the thing, but it's still able to do.
mhm,
Um, it's seeing that girl, it's seeing that little girl.
mhm,
That I really, really like seeing that. And it's not always like in joy, right? But
mhm,
it's seeing that little girl. Sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's anger.
mhm,
But it's coming from that old childlike place.
mhm.
It's a really unique experience seeing this,
Yeah.
and I just love it. I absolutely love it. Seeing this come out.
Mhm. It's all that, yeah, for especially for me that had to do my own work and do my own processing to make this an okay thing to do.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes amount of, just the deprogramming alone was like, gosh, I was like, I can actually do whatever I want. And I was like, well, what I really want to do is like have fun or cry for no reason or like, and I
Mhm,
know everything is going to be okay for maybe the first time in my life because somebody trusts me enough to like show them who I really am and not the perfect version of me or the corporate version of me or whatever. They're like, no, it's
mhm.
all those layers get stripped off, kind of painfully one after another. And every time you strip off a layer, well, there's like five more underneath. And then all of a sudden you kind of get to this place where you're just like, you're just who you are.
Right,
Um, You're who you were before your jobs and your disappointments and the pain and the hurt.
right.
Because through this, you can kind of work through your trauma. Then you didn't even know you were kind of carrying with you until you've been triggered in a certain way and you work through it. And, you know,
And not
um,
even trauma, just bad shit that like not necessarily is as bad as trauma, but it's still held on to. You know what
mhm,
I'm saying? It's like hearing your mom say a certain thing, but for years. You know, it's like you're in middle school, getting ready, got your backpack on, and she goes, "You're wearing that to school?" And just
yeah.
hearing that over and over and over, it's like it's not exactly trauma, but it's enough. You know, it's like like a scratch just constantly year after year after year on the psyche. And it's like that leaves a mark. And
Mhm,
next thing you know, you've got a grown woman who's fucking petrified of not showing up good enough for people's visual appeal.
mhm.
You know, like her clothing, you know, it's like, oh, everything's got to be like perfect, you
Perfect.
know, and that rigidness prevents the little girl from coming out
Yeah.
and feeling that freedom.
Yeah, it's
And
for that.
for the people on my show, you don't know this because your first time here, but we often talk about this, the feminine core
Mhm,
and getting past like all those like layers. And sometimes you go straight through the layers, sometimes you can go around them. There's many ways, but it always requires trust.
mhm,
But when you get there, what's inside is this feminine core, and it's like it's almost identityless, it's formless, it's shapeless, it can take any shape, um, boundless energy. It's like, and it's really great seeing a woman get there, right? But it's, you know, like I said, it takes like a container, it takes trust, it takes time. You can catch glimpses of it in shorter time periods, which is really cool. Where
mhm.
that like the little girl kind of like pops out and then goes back in, you know, like a little snail like sticking his head out from a shell and then going back. But you know, it's there, and it's like what I've found is that this lifestyle gives a reliable process and foundation for that to exist.
Yeah,
Potential, you know, it's not a guarantee because it always factors in like who's involved,
yeah,
but it gives the potential for it
mhm.
versus like I don't know any other system for relating that does that.
No, the technology to be able to do that is just, some of the most, sophisticated in any relational space
Oh
ever.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't go deep in there. I mean, therapy's great. I've never gotten to where I am right now through therapy. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Yeah.
it's just, and it can look similar kind of to, the misperceptions that a lot of people have of this kind of brainless, yes, sir, and kneeling the right way and going through all the rituals and stuff. But that's really just stuff that like holds it together without ever going deeper. When you do get to that deeper, it's still not mind, it's more present than you've ever been in your entire life. It's
Hmm.
smelling smells across the room. It's just being relaxed. Um, yeah, it's being able to actually feel it's being able to be a mess in front of somebody and know it's going to be okay. Just like ugly cry it out, and then, be like a child again 2 seconds later. And it's like, or just like food never tastes. It sounds crazy, but it's true because you've taken away now all the chatter and all the extra things and all the managing and the to-do list in your head and all this stuff, and you're just like, wow, like cooking dinner is actually really, really enjoyable because you're
Hmm.
concentrated on this one thing. It's kind of like you were talking about the act of service that comes from you're completely wholly there to put all your energy into like creating this and love into creating this meal. And you're thinking about, I think about like all the different people who had to work, to be able to get this food right here, and then I can present that to, you know my person, you
Hmm.
know and it's just that little act that people do every day and they don't even think about it. They're just like, oh god, I gotta go home, I gotta make dinner. I'm
Right.
like,
Because the thought is on the next thing, not what you're doing.
yeah, I'm like, I
Yeah.
could take home and make dinner.
And that's like a lot of the practices in BDSM is that it almost forces you to be present,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just simple act of like say like spanking.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's hard like unless you like go into subspace, but that's not exactly daydreaming because it's not this like willful action of the mind. But it's kind of hard to daydream and like think about stuff like while you're getting caned or spanked or something like that. Like it really like pulls you into the present, like because of the sharp pain, the adrenaline, like maybe his words, it all just kind of keeps you right there. You don't
Right.
really have an opportunity to start drifting off and think about, oh, I've got this, I've got that, I've got that. And that's why, like, after something as simple as like a half-hour spanking session that doesn't turn into anything else, just that,
Yeah.
it's this relief.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the brain gets turned off, the emotions get shifted, um, and then you're brought into the body,
Yep.
right?
Just
All the awareness just goes right
like
into the body. It's like, okay, I can't not ignore my nervous system right now because my bottom's getting whacked, you know? And so
it is an instant.
it's a really amazing vehicle. Like we were saying, like with the therapy, I say this to, to my audience a lot is that like as a like a coach for this and as well as a BDSM practitioner, the healing aspects, both for like my clients and the subs that I've worked with, I can say and do things that a therapist never could,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it would be against the rules, right? They're part of the whole thing is that like the therapist cannot get close to you. They
Mm-hmm.
cannot develop love for you. They cannot become your friend. They cannot actually care deeply for your existence.
Mm-hmm.
And once they leave the office or once the client leaves the office, boom, you're gone. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to hear from you. You can't call them, right? It's just wait until next week for your next appointment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it, right? But with this, it is like therapy, but it's more because it's like I can dig, right? Like I can see a little something like, oh, she needs to be dug at. Like that's like I can see the like this like paint peeling, and I want to pull the paint off,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's gonna be uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
I know that it's for their own good. And it's going to be cathartic. It's going to help. It's going to turn into a discussion that will meander and kind of bring about some sort of like real transformation that might take years of
Mhm.
therapy, because in therapy they're just waiting for that paint to peel off on its own,
Mhm. Mhm.
which will happen, I guess, through the right questioning and support and all that stuff. But we don't have years. you know, like we can get this done in weeks.
Yeah, in a single scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes. Um, yeah, there's been, things that just kind of float up that you didn't even know bothered you as much as it did or something. And a really good dominant, really good, you know, person who's just curious about how all your mechanisms and the way you work. It's like, ooh, there's a thing there. Like,
Hmm.
play with that. Like, let's peel that back a little bit and
Sure.
see what's under there.
Yeah, there's a different level of giving a shit in
Hmm.
this lifestyle that doesn't occur outside of it.
Uh-uh. No, you hide your stuff and, outside this lifestyle. You keep
Mhm,
that buried, that's yours. Because sometimes you don't want to let go of it. Whatever that thing is that you're carrying that they're about to extravate, right out of you. Sometimes, that thing has kept you safe your whole life,
mhm,
or you didn't, it's something that has served you in one way or another. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had it. But it's not serving you in the situation you are now. So let's make a scene out of it.
right.
Do something with it. And there's a certain amount of like, oh, I don't necessarily, oh, there it goes. And you feel better. And
Yeah,
I didn't really need that actually, you know?
yep, like, I've had a number of scenarios where I wasn't even going for emotional catharsis, but it ended up being emotional catharsis, and at first I was like, "What's going on? Like, what did I do?"
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, I was like, "Oh, she's, like, opened up like crazy,"
Mm.
and what happened to come out was some really, really old tears,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, man. Like, it's just
It's
like
the,
every day in this lifestyle, it teaches me something new.
hmm yeah, people
So oh, go ahead.
prepared.
Yeah, what was the last thing?
Yeah, people aren't prepared for, I've written a few pieces of like, you think you know what you're getting into when you get into this stuff, but when your soul's cracked wide open right in front of somebody, A, they better be prepared to know what to do with it or to be able to hold that. And B,
Mhm,
what are you going to be left with once that's done? It's a spiritual, you know, life changing experience to be that seen and that known. And not all the parts of us are nice.
mhm.
Um, you know, it's, I've had to work through a lot of things to be able to be comfortable being that seen. But there's just no way around it, and that's the work.
I just wanted to write myself a reminder really quick to send you copies of my 2 books,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you would really enjoy them. Uh, the uh, the I think I mentioned them. The Codex of the Sovereign Order and the Annals of the Yielded Queen. Yeah, so I think you'd really enjoy those, and I'd love to actually hear like what your master thinks of these things. Like, see if you'd be interested in leafing through them and giving me some
Yeah, he's
thoughts. That
a
would be
couple
really
books
cool.
himself. Yeah. Uh-huh. Has a podcast.
Oh, he
And it's
does.
well introduced. Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
I'll
love to connect, and at least just to say hi, since that I've have you here.
I'll do that after this, as a matter of fact.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I should say thank you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to submission, what what's a misconception about submissives, even within the community, that still frustrates you? Or is there something that frustrates you about the misconceptions of submissives?
There's there's a few good ones.
Okay.
Um, well, okay. There's three that come to mind. Um, Today I had a friend of mine well, not today, it happened recently, but was they weren't in a dynamic necessarily, but they knew each other for a long time, play together, and she's a submissive and he's a dominant. And um, there were such deep misunderstandings between their relationship because they didn't talk about it, because she thought, well, he's a dominant, so he should be leading me. And I didn't feel like I had the right to ask him these kind of questions because he's a dominant.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, but you guys had a relationship,
Right.
right? And so there were expectations, there were things that were going on there. But he wasn't your dominant. You know what I
It was
mean?
just a dominant that you were playing
Yeah,
with.
right.
Yeah.
But that misconception that you can't question or talk to any dominant, that they have some kind of like overarching say over all submissives is not, I don't think that was a long time, passed between them. And so many, each one of them thought that this thing was a thing. And that's really heartbreaking that they didn't feel like they were able, or she didn't feel like she was able to talk and just
Hmm.
be, "Hey, what is this? What's going on?" You know what I mean? Because he's a dominant. So that one got me. And then there's like just common myths that I've written about this one too is, yeah. And I think that this works for men too. Men who, people who submit, is often people in power, people who have very high stressful executive type jobs. Those are the ones that most often want to go home and have somebody take control and throw them around or something, which A doesn't address any kind of long-term relationship. That's again of an idea of just being dominated, right? Because you
Hmm.
dominate everybody all day. But I mean, I can say from my instance is that my root desires, my base desires were there when I was a teenager before I had any positions of power in the world. That it was just kind of who I was. It was something that turned me on, even at a young age. So if your desire predates power, that if you look at that myth for a little bit, it just kind of dissolves. So I did a little bit of study on this, and it affects different parts of your brain. Um, so so there's
What,
that.
the power or the submission?
Yeah, people like what arouses you in your brain, and basically your reaction and relationship with power. Um, and just the instinct to lead your, type A type personalities or something like that are going to be the ones who want to be tied up or something in bed. And that's not,
Hmm.
I don't know, it's just not true for all people. So, but it's a lie that, I mean, I said that not even a few years ago. I was like, well, I have a really stressful job where I have to lead a lot, um, like I lead everything. So, yeah, it makes sense that I would want to be submissive when I'm not at work.
It
And
does.
even as I'm saying it though, I'm like, well, that's not true though. I was like, my submission, especially the more you get to know yourself and, have this become more of your identity, I'm a much better leader because I'm a submissive. It
Mm.
is weird and it seems backwards, but because I'm able to be in this state, um,
Is it kind of like the same thing? Like the best leaders were once followers.
yeah, maybe. Is
Yeah.
that a more accurate way to say than, I lead all day, so I kneel at night,
Hmm.
um, kind of thing. I'm sure that that's not universal, that there are absolutely people in power who, just want to hire a dominatrix and call it a day, and that's their little secret compartment. That absolutely happens when, I
Hmm.
used to see that. But just because I lead, that's not there's no correlation there between the two.
Sure. But
Yeah, I
it's
just know.
common. It's common enough to make it a thing.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
also an excuse to make it okay, So it's like
Right.
powerful people can't be like I'm a submissive, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
actually, can, and I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, I've come across a number of I don't like using kink, apps or anything like that. Like, I don't go to the kink places to interact with kink. So I don't use FetLife. I don't use any, uh, like BDSM or kink related dating apps, none of that. I use just the regular stuff.
Yeah.
And I notice patterns of, like, certain types of women who they see my profile, which is very overt and clear of, like, what I
Mhm,
am, what I like, and what type of relationships I'm into. I don't try to hide it.
mhm,
And so I just noticed, like, certain patterns of, like, types of girls who are, like, really drawn to what I've got to offer.
mhm.
And it's so I but I so I do see that as one of the patterns. Like,
Yeah,
one of the common patterns is there's pictures of her, like, um, on, like, a private jet wearing, like, suits, right? Like skirt, little pencil skirt, really tight,
yeah,
chiseled freaking, like, suit jacket,
yeah,
jewelry, like, hair looks like it doesn't even move when the breeze
yeah.
hits, like, everything's, like, rigid. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, of course, this is, someone like me comes
There is,
along with your
yeah.
perception of what I am. It may not even be
Mhm,
true, but whatever you believe that I am, you're like,
mhm.
oh yeah, that's
That
where I need to go. you know?
power also recognizes power.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah, that's
a
true.
person that's comfortable in their own skin and all that stuff is just like, yeah, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, but
Um,
that's just one of the patterns. There's a few that I
yeah,
noticed, but that's certainly one of them is like the powerful the powerful boss bitch who's tired or just needs a break
yeah.
from
That's
being
a
that
lot of the
boss
women
bitch.
that reach out to me too.
What's that?
Mhm. That's a lot of the women that reach out to me too.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah, just like so wait, reaching out to you for tips on how to kind of take their own break from that or wanting to be dominated?
um, all sorts of things, I'm
Right.
tired. I've taken
Yeah,
time
yeah.
myself.
Exhaustion is a thing.
It's a thing. It's everybody's tired. Everybody's
Mhm.
tired. And I think a lot of that comes from living in your masculine your whole life.
Oh,
That's,
yeah.
you're a woman and you're just running everything and is without, we've been told this lie our entire lives that, we need to be strong, independent women. We cannot rely on men. Do not, don't be financially reliant upon a man. Don't be, and, while some of that is, it was true for a long time for a good reason. But the pendulum, I think, has kind of swung a little bit too far in that, like, no, we actually do need to have relationships and find love and find connection. And, like, that's not a bad thing to be able to trust people and,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. So there's a lot of just, again, that unwinding that people have to do. And is especially like if you've had to work super hard to get where you are, probably in a male dominated field, and you also have kids and you're just in your masculine all the time. It's like, yeah, another seeing a guy that's like, oh, I could actually let go a little bit of that. Like maybe I can just be a woman for 2 seconds is
Mhm.
incredibly. So it might not even be a dominance thing. It just might be like a self-regulating thing.
Yeah,
They see in a man that's, you know, not, you don't have to manage their emotions all the time. They aren't living in their feminine and they aren't, this, once your polarity is, inverted, then it creates all this tension that is exhausting.
of
Uh,
course.
yeah. So do they see in a dominant sometimes somebody that they can just like exhale
Yep.
a little bit, whether that means whatever that looks like. Um,
Yeah, you were mentioning the pendulum swinging, and I think that perhaps it was a necessary thing for the world
yeah. Yeah.
because oftentimes when we go to extremes, it makes like in the macro and the micro, it makes us realize certain things. It
Mm-hmm.
kind of reminds me of like uh, how, say, like a prisoner would take for granted the freedoms that they have after they put in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
and they're in there for a few days and like, holy crap, like I love being having access to my friends and the yard, and sure there's like bullshit to deal with, but like it's
Yeah.
not solitary, right? So I think
Mhm.
like when we get pushed into, certain extremes, it allows us to realize what we've taken for granted.
Yeah.
And I think that the swinging of the pendulum, because it's been swinging for eons, is it what allows us to see things, right?
Yeah.
Allows us to see injustices, imbalances, things that are out of alignment, like both on the macro and micro, like within ourselves, and then you say society, the universe, whatever. Um, but but you mentioned, I want to touch really quick because we could go down a rabbit hole. But before I shift, you mentioned something about, sorry, the spiritual aspect
Mhm.
of submission. So, is there, like, briefly, can you touch on your thoughts or feelings around that?
Yeah. For me, the process of being able to know myself well enough and becoming self-aware enough to, admit that this is even a thing. A lot of people don't even get that far, unfortunately. But to be able to be a person that's okay living in their skin, being okay with being a person that if the whole world knew tomorrow, I'm sitting here right live on YouTube, in a pretty precarious job, right? And
Hmm.
so, if something were to happen tomorrow and they're like the whole world, you know, that was blown wide open, to be a person that's okay with that. Like
Hmm.
perfectly okay with that. I'm perfectly comfortable within myself. That took a lot. That took a
Hmm.
lot of shadow work. That took a lot of unprogramming. That took a lot of self reflection and reflection and re reflection, which is in itself a spiritual practice. I went to a Jesuit undergrad school, college, an amount of self reflection and meditation and, all of this stuff. Submission, well, and don't, it's a practice,
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
living practice. It's something that you have to sit with, re examine. When something goes sideways, you have to wonder how did that happen and why, and usually the root cause of that is something so much less obvious than you think, but it is unobtainable unless you do this work. And then it's ritualistic, the being able to make things significant, little tiny small acts of service, things that you're paying attention to that most people never see, or never slow down enough in their life. And that's really important, this slowing down and this taking away of things that don't matter and doing the things that you want to do instead of the things that you feel like you have to do,
Hmm.
and giving yourself permission to just be yourself. Well, you don't know most people don't know. If you ask them, who are you, they I don't know, I'm the boss at whatever work, or I am a mom, or I'm a whatever, no, like, who are you really? And most people
Right.
have
It's
this
usually tied to a function that they do in life.
role.
Hmm.
You're not a role, there's that inner core part of you, like we were talking about. Um, Once you strip off all those things, it's, again, like you said, it's almost formless.
Yeah.
It's endless, and it's your soul, it's your spirit and your essence, and to be able to get to know that deeply and be in relationship with that all the time, to be able to sit with your darkness
Hmm.
and be comfortable. And a lot of people think of darkness as, something bad. And I think of darkness as, if you were to put a telescope into the ground and look at what's going on down there in the dark, there's growth and roots and nutrients in the soil, and
and
that's
and history.
history and
Hmm.
all these amazing things that make everything above ground and all the growth possible. It's there is no light without darkness, right? We can young it out all day long, but it's like, and those things that you suppress,
Young it
being
out. I like that.
young it out,
But
I'll out. So,
no,
but
but you're right though, because
it comes out sideways if you don't. There's consequences.
of course, absolutely. And what it really comes down to is that this practice, this life practice, when done properly, I'd say at least on when it comes to say a lived 24/7 dynamic, not just like, oh, weekend playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that it very much encourages you to face your ego, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
ego being what it is that you think you are,
Yeah.
who it is that you think you are, and that's not necessarily who you are, right? It's just one's self image.
Mm-hmm.
And and I tell this to my guys, my regular listeners, that like the word persona, it comes, I think, from an old Latin word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or the personality comes from persona, which is Latin. And that was the name for the mask that was worn by performers on stage, like during plays. And there was this enormous mask with a big face on it, because so that the people in the stands way far away could see who the characters were. And there was a megaphone on the
Mm-hmm.
mask so it could project their voices,
Mm-hmm.
and this was called persona, that mask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all about like engaging that mask and then like what's behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's really difficult to get behind that mask, sometimes it's really easy.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what the real aim of like every religious spiritual practice is in trying to engage with the core self, trying to
Mm-hmm.
go past that ego and that all important I, and get to the self that's behind that unknown, unknowable self. But it is knowable, but it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is like from
Yeah.
Buddhism to Taoism, Christianity, Judaism, Jainism, Shintoism, like all of the isms. I think that's really the basic thing, you know. But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is that when you put a flogger in the mix, it expedites things.
It does expedite it.
you know,
Uh,
like it's years of meditating in a cave can be compressed to a couple of sessions with a flogger.
with being a sobbing mess after.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
It's
So I
cool
want to just
to be
transfer a little bit
able
to the
to.
house.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah. So you have a house, right? And so for those that don't know, traditionally in BDSM, historically, there were houses. There still are houses. And it's just a family, a collective, but it's a hierarchy family, right? And it's just it. Well, I'll let you explain what houses are, and then you started your own house that's called the House of Three Rivers, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it
so let's
comes.
know like what a house is, and then tell us how you came about. Well, first, I want curious about that name too.
Yeah. Yeah. That name came from my Substack. So the Substack is power, arrow, soul. And those are like the three currents that I most think about
Hmm.
and play with in my writing. I've always been fascinated with power and how it flows and who has it and why and who gives it away and why and who takes it and why. And arrows is just, that energy, that erotic energy that flows through everything. Whether I'm working or whether I'm, hiking or whatever it's always, that's the thing that gives me my creative energy. If everything is aligned and in tune, then, yeah, it's where a lot of my creative energy comes from.
Hmm.
Um, and soul, I mean, a lot of this is soul work. This ego death, of being able to sit with yourself in this practice of reflection and letting go. Um, so yeah, so that's the basis of my Substack. Being able to pull all these things together in one body and one life, and to be able to live that fully expressed is my jam when I write. And being able to help other people kind of let go of their hangups and the stories that they told themselves, and, helping people give themselves the permission to even just try this,
Hmm.
and see what it's about. So yeah, a lot of the dungeons that nowadays and clubs and things, I know the one that's local in Denver was a house at one time, back before there were such public things, and certainly things are much more accepted now than they used to. They used to be kind of underground or gatherings held at people's houses. And there's lots of different types of houses. They're much different now than they used to be. A little bit less traditional. There's a house here that I was a member of a master house slave house where there were multiple slaves that served one master, and they had events. There was a lot of different ways to serve. Everything from just helping with food service to dealing at poker or whatever it was.
Hmm.
Or some of the slaves served this one master, and so I was a friend of a friend to somebody, and that's how I got in. So I just got to like help out my, friend that was a slave. That was the
Hmm.
kind.
It's like I have like images of a story of O when you tell me that.
It was a little bit more like real than, yeah. It sounds very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
For
but
those
yeah,
that haven't watched that movie or read the book, give it a shot. It's fun.
yeah,
The premise is funny, like in the movie, right? Where the husband's like, I'm taking almost like he's like dropping off his daughter to summer camp. you know,
yeah,
they are. I'm going to take you to this guy. He's like, what for? Is it?
it,
Oh,
it,
well,
like,
he's going to program you, right?
yeah,
I'm leaving you in his hands. This is a big mansion, and he's just going to like rip apart your psyche and like turn you into this slave. And
uh-huh.
you're going to be taken care of by like the other like senior slaves until you become one of them. uh,
Hmm.
like a total trip. And it was
It,
made back in like what, like the 60s or something.
uh-huh.
So the
Yeah.
acting's really bad. The film quality is terrible. It has that like 60s
Hmm.
grain and color. But it's a cult classic.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fun.
Um, so like
Yeah.
what happens in houses though?
It depends on the way it's built. I know another house that has more of like a Wicca type.
Right.
That
So they get together for like seances and making potions and stuff.
they get together for like solstice events and things
Okay.
like that. But they do have like poker party. For some reason, poker thing is a huge thing in houses. I don't know
Huh.
why, or at
It
least
makes me think of like Boy Scout meetings. Like, like, all right, we're gonna work on our tonight, we're gonna work on our knot tying, we're gonna work on our
yeah.
our whittling skills and like how
Skill-
to start a fire with two sticks.
It is skill sharing. There is
Right.
a skill sharing in, the one house I belonged to, there was house dominance, and there were, people in service to the house. And, it's just kind of a way for people who have similar interests to get together and form a chosen family in a community. And there's
Hmm.
joint decisions that are made. There's everybody kind of has a role in one way or another. Some of the events are open to the public. And so, it's a way for people to kind of, in a kind of like a continued thing from the old community, that, this is a place where people can kind of come and learn and find their people and learn new skills and learn the protocol and learn the etiquette, that will be useful for them to carry on into, different aspects of this lifestyle. Somebody could learn how to be a good dominant, hypothetically. Somebody can learn what it's like to do service, but not actually be in a DS dynamic where this is now, your entire relationship. Maybe we're going to agree to serve and be trained as a slave for, or a submissive for 3 months by serving at events, by learning from the other submissives. So
Mhm.
it's a really neat idea for somebody who wants to try it, but not get into a full relationship with a dominant, to be able to just kind of act it out in service of a house.
Right, like
But
kind of getting your feet wet.
kind of getting your feet wet, but you'll be released from it after, or anytime you want.
Right.
It's like there's usually a time commitment or something like that. So it's a great way to experience things hopefully it's in a safe container where you are able to kind of test the misconceptions that you had and ask questions of like why this works. Is there's very much like a teaching type aspect to it.
Hmm. Yeah, it all goes back to the dominant,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like that really determines what's allowed to happen, what might transpire, good or bad.
Yeah.
It really determines so much moving forward.
Yeah.
Because even if the submissive is knowledgeable or inexperienced, well behaved, bad behaved,
Mm-hmm.
the parameters of like what's done with all of that comes down to the dominant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And on
Yeah.
that note, though,
Mm-hmm.
how, like, what's the, because you said currently you are a slave.
Mm-hmm.
How does that contrast with being the head of a house?
I know it's crazy, right? Like a dominant that can hold it.
Well,
That
I get it because I understand like kind of the, I guess, the compartmentalization or train track switching like when necessary.
no,
But so like what is there like a contrast, or how does
no.
that work out?
You know that again, like it always just runs through me.
Mhm.
It makes me again a better leader and a better organizer and all that stuff because I have space for it.
Right.
Through my submission. It's kind of fun too, right? To think about here's someone who, is leading events, who is in charge of the house, who's, has people who are answering to me, have dominance that answer to me. But it's building a community and a safe place for people to learn. We had events last night. One of them's just like a book club. It's like a dark romance book club, and one of them's like an erotic writers group. And then we had a munch afterwards, and all these things. And it was so great to see all these people come together. And then behind me here is my master that's just watching, and it's just like a hand on my back or something, or he's led a lot of community events. So I'm able to turn around like, these people have been talking for a long time, or maybe they've stopped writing. Like, there was this support level and kind of like an advisor and a mentor that can help me. I had a vision of wanting to form these communities. I wanted a vision of being able to teach people what I wish I knew 30 years ago. There are
Mhm.
so many people who come to me and it's like, I want to experience this, but I don't know how and I don't know it's safe or whatever. You can train to be a submissive under me. Like I know enough from my life. So my master is able to look like at the entirety of my life and all of my experiences and my wants and my needs and desires. And it was like, formed a container strong enough that I can have that experience like become real life in front of me and watch people kind of form around that energy that I have that's excited to be in the same space as it. And it is as that passion and excitement and knowing I'm able to do something like that came from me being able to let go of so many things and live in that submission, knowing that he's still, I might be making decisions about the house, but he's like over the whole entire thing, because he's cleared that kind of space, in my life and in my brain and in my soul to be able to be like, oh, this is actually a thing that can happen.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. It makes me
Yeah.
want to like come out there and like pay a visit and come to a book club meeting.
You should. It's so fun. Well, it was really neat actually to see there was a couple people who showed up that were old, like school members, this widely known master in the community that's been honored by a lot of, showed up to my book club meeting. And I was
Mhm.
just, oh my gosh, that means so much
That's
to
cool.
have kind of community support from people that I respect so much. And again, it was my master that was like, you can absolutely do this. I know this is something that's important to you.
Now, I have a couple of questions about that,
Mhm.
because I don't know much about like the BDSM scene as like as the scene. right? I've never been someone who is into scenes. Like I've been an illustrator for 25 years. I could probably name you 3 illustrators, right?
Same.
But friends of mine, they know the history of it. They know who's popular now. They know this, that, and I'm like, I just want to draw, you know.
Mhm.
Uh, but I imagine that it's probably not common, correct me if I'm wrong, for A, submissives to open houses, and B, women to open houses. Is
Right.
that
It's
correct?
very not traditional. Yeah.
Right.
I think
So
of
it's
it.
typically male dominance
Mhm.
that open houses. Although, like, I do know in New York, there
Mhm.
are dominatrix houses that are run
Yeah.
by dominatrix, and that's like not uncommon. But
Mhm.
that's New York City. You know what I
That's New
mean?
York City. You don't see it in rural places. You don't see it much outside of, I think I know of one other female-led house, at least in this region. Um, there aren't many of them. And if
Yeah.
they are, usually they're like a dominatrix. It's never a submissive,
Right.
y- let alone a slave.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a rare thing, and I think that's kind of what makes it different and special. So I'm able to teach things and share things with a community because I have a different perspective, than anybody else, and I have a different history than anybody else.
For
Uh,
sure.
my past and my life experience. I mean, everybody's got their own, but mine's not a usual one. Um, and then I'll also say, like, um, I think a lot of it came from my Substack, and it's funny that I've, you know, men who would want to interact with me. I'm like, great, read my Substack, you know, previously, and then it's like they're like, oh, like I well thought I was a dom, but then I read your writing and I realized I have so much to learn. Like, can you actually teach me some stuff? And I
Hmm.
heard that over and over and over again. And I'm like, well, I mean, why am I teaching all these dominants how to be dominant? Like, are there no research? I'm like, but I absolutely can. I do have that history. I know what makes a good dominant. I
Sure.
can along the way. You're going to have to find that for yourself, but there are some tools. So that's and just living online lives now, people crave a sense of belonging and community and people around you. And because things are so online, it's so important, I feel like, to be able to get these people. There were several people who showed up yesterday that were, people who were just learning how to be Dom. So I'll get them all together and then they can like bounce things off of each other. Lone wolfing is okay if you're doing it in a certain way to be able to test your stuff against other people and have other people kind of hold you into account and just ask questions and have a space full of people, especially for people who are new in the community. I almost would not suggest, doing it alone, for a lot of people, because
Of
there are just
course.
so many, you know, misconceptions and people who would take advantage of you, dominants and submissives alike. It's almost more common to have you know, a view of this that's not real or a fantasy version, but until you scale it, until you test it in real life, then, you don't know what you're doing is wrong.
Right.
And that can really,
Until that, you hear that hockey check? You gotta put these certain things to test. You have to apply them in the real world, and then
mhm.
it just shows you. But you have to be willing to take your lumps, right?
Yeah.
Which is like the beginnings of that whole ego. It starts with ego denting.
Mhm.
Before it starts dissolving, so it starts taking dents and dings like an old car bumper. And but that's the process, right? That's part of it. Getting, just kind of getting checked at the door. And speaking of doors, how do you vet people who are wanting to join your house? Like if I was like, oh my gosh, I need to join this house,
Yeah.
what do I go through?
So it's difficult to be a member of the house. So house member. So there's public events, and then there's house members. There's things that are going to be internal, and so house members are people who are in long term. they're almost like community elders. They're going to be people who have experience, at least in some, certainly in skills. I mean, you could know
Okay,
rope.
so people just can't like randomly apply. You have to be like the community vets you.
The community vets you. You have to be showing up to these things over and over again. There's
Mhm.
ways to serve the house, either as a dominant or submissive. You can be in charge of certain things, and the more responsibility that you get, and the more trust that's earned, the more classes. You have to do the self contract, like we were talking about earlier. I want a level of emotional intelligence that's standard. You've had to do at least this much work because you've done this much work with me. I know what you've done. We've worked with this together. And you have to have a willingness to, I want people to be able to teach their own classes. Whatever it is that you're skilled at, whether in the real world or whether it is in the BDSM community or in your basic like BDSM skills or whatever that is, if you're, you know, like some people are great trauma therapists, like there's all sorts of different ways, and not just rope or impact classes or
Right,
things.
not just the expected stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
deeper.
by that time everybody knows those things.
Yeah,
Right.
anybody can take a flogging class, but
Right.
this, whatever it is that's like normal in the BDSM community, like the high standard is I want it to take 5 steps farther. You know, like this is a deeper aspect of BDSM work, and so you can't be teaching that stuff unless you've done it with me.
Mhm.
You've there that I want to see that you've done that amount of work and are humble enough and have that desire to help others, who are newer in this community. So that takes most people who ask me, hey, can I just join the house? And I'm like, yeah, you sure can, after this and this and this and this and this. And they're just like, oh, I thought it'd be fun. But you absolutely can come to our community events, which are all the time.
Mhm.
That's something that you can definitely still be a part of and still find that sense of
And
belonging and
and
not just
that
the
in and
one.
of itself is sort of like a vetting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they get all disgruntled and like, fine, like whatever, then it's like, oh, that's a sign that they wouldn't even belong here anyways.
They just vetted
But for
them.
the person's like, oh, for real? Like I can like come to your bake sale or your book evening.
What?
Cool. Okay. Great. I'll be there. And they show up early,
Yeah,
like all excited and shit.
they'll show themselves. Yeah, be a visitor at our play party. Be a whatever. It's
Yep.
just those incremental levels of trust and like knowledge, self knowledge, and knowledge in this lifestyle.
Yeah.
Um, you got to have all of it. So
That's really cool. Well, I I know it just started, so I wish you all the best moving forward for your house. I'm sure it's going to be great. And maybe at some point in the future, I'll be able to come out just to at least to pay a visit and see how things are
yeah,
going.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, look, I want to kind of like look at, reflection a little bit.
Hmm.
So, what is the biggest mistake you see newcomers make that you didn't understand was a mistake until recent years?
Mm,
Like, what's something you learned that you wish you learned earlier?
yeah, God, so much. Um,
I guess maybe for like
yeah, this is
newcomers, right? So, like, oh, I want to be a submissive. And you're like, all right, this is definitely a speed bump that is coming that I wish I had known that I'm going to tell you about.
I think it was interesting last night to start with like that dark romance book club
Oh,
because
yeah.
that was advertised on Eventbrite. So it had some people outside, the kink community that came into it. And then it went into the Writers Club, then it went into the Munch. So some people just stayed and they came from the dark romance book, but now all of a sudden they're in a Munch and are surrounded by people with some of them decades in the BDSM community. And so this whole like thing was just kind of like, it was really interesting to hear like the things that, and I think that is for people who aren't in the lifestyle, it's especially after 50 Shades came out, and we aren't even going to go into all the problems with that. But like that dark romance, that whatever, I think that that is that's like, the equivalent of like men's porn, maybe. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
it's,
without a doubt. Yeah.
and so it's like that, yeah, that idea of what dominance and submission is, because that is non-consensual. That is, we have so much ad nauseum frameworks around consent and boundaries, and
Mm.
almost to a ridiculous point, but it's there for a reason. And yes,
Yeah, all the acronyms, SSC, rack, prick, all of those things.
with some of the most, yeah, it's created a self-awareness in people, and people's space and respect and all of these things, and safety and trauma, and yes. And so dark romance throws all of that out the window.
Oh,
Like the
for sure.
100% there is trauma led, is murder, is just violence, is all these things. It's definitely non-consensual sex, and not CNC. There's just straight up non-consensual.
Right.
And so if you're coming from that, I just want a guy to take control, and I want somebody to just put me in my place
Right.
and da 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 da,
Ravage me.
ravage. And ravagement fantasies for women are one of the most common.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
What Savage says,
Yeah, the non-consensual fantasy is the number one fantasy. The top.
100%. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, Dan Savage says, our fears, our what is our eroticized fears come out sideways, manifested into our, life. And it's like, yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing that women don't know, that all women experience this, almost. Not all, but it's like, it's so common to
Oh
be.
yeah, it's super, super common.
There were 40 RSVPs to this book club, and I was like, I've never seen, I'm like, I was kind of getting nervous. Everybody wants to.
You ladies got yourself a little bit of an addiction.
It's,
Yeah, it's
I've
it's
got
it's something of a like a I think a 20 at last I looked, I think it's a 28 point 28 yeah, $28 billion industry.
yeah, yeah.
Just erotica.
So if you come into that from that point of view, and a lot of people, that is their entry point, that's kink to them,
Yeah.
right? And but if you think that some guy that's just gonna like hold you down and ravish you, and like how you're really gonna feel in real life compared to what it was like reading about a character having it done to them in a book. We had a big conversation last night about, it's funny that those of us who are coming into the actual kink world with all of these frameworks around consent and boundaries and trauma, to be able to just kind of like throw that right in the garbage can real quick and like read a dark romance novel, that's kinky to us.
Right. Yeah,
We're
to
just,
kind of like let go of the frameworks and
yeah,
just go, "Oh, I'm going to revel in this." Like I know it's pure fantasy, so I'm just going to like revel in it.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
consenting to, all of those things when you sign up for that. But for people who are not in the kink world, who don't understand that and have never heard of rock and, all of these things, and haven't had the consent training 500 times, it's like that stuff could actually happen. You're signing up in a DS dominant, you're going to get a dom, to have these things happen to you. And so you're kind of okay with whatever, they're saying is okay. And maybe that's their idea because all they've ever watched is revenge porn or
Right.
BDS porn. And so if two people like that come together in real life, who haven't gone through any kind of work or community, or have other people's opinions or any kind of about accountability, boy, that could really be a dangerous situation.
It
You know,
certainly could.
you might put yourself in a situation where it's like, if somebody says it in a nice enough way with just the amount of charm to be like, yeah, I can absolutely make all your, fantasies come true, you'll sign up for anything. And
Mhm.
it's like,
And
no,
we're not just talking physical danger here. We're
psychological.
talking like emotional danger, psychological danger.
Oh man.
Um, but the thing is, though, it's really funny because in say woman's reading this novel, and let's say it's something as simple as like the male character, the dom, like slaps her, right?
Yeah.
And she's thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's so hot," right? And just generally speaking, it is okay.
Uh-huh.
So let's say she goes into a situation, but it's not set up properly with the right people involved, with the right knowledge, and so on, and she gets slapped. The reality versus the fantasy probably feels very different,
Very different. It's how
right?
fun it games till you get your eardrum blown out from the sun. Like,
Right. But so
yeah,
that alone, but also I'm thinking the psychological and emotional aspect, right?
yeah.
Versus say like a trained dom or your dom, right? Where you're
Mhm.
like, this is my dom, right? And then
Yeah.
he slaps you.
Hmm.
It's a totally different thing.
Totally different thing.
Like when there is established trust, when there's established containment, there's an understanding of pain limits and things of that nature, subtle cues of discomfort,
Hmm.
um, all that stuff.
Yeah.
The simple action just
Hmm.
transforms, right? So you get like this fantasy, the the misunderstood reality, and then the like constructed reality.
Yeah.
It they're all very different from one another.
Very
And it's the
different.
same action.
Hmm. And I
Yeah.
mean, the emptiness that you'll come away with, like, without that emotional connection, and just entering into something, you're entering into a scene without understanding that you're in a scene. Well, because you haven't created a scene. You've just
And
lived.
maybe they don't even know what a scene is.
Yeah. Without having that knowledge and having not negotiated it out and having, because in the books, they take it, you know, every single romance books goes something like the man is like, I want to come take you, you're mine. And then they're like, no, no, no. And then they're like, yes, yes, yes. No, no, no. Okay, you're mine forever. And like, and
Yeah.
that's, I'm just
Yeah.
going to take it.
Yeah, the girl's always like a little bit defiant in the
That's always
beginning.
defiant, and
Yeah.
it was a huge, like, bratting thing that was, like, super popular in social media for a while. That's,
Oh
like,
yeah.
that was my introduction to it because in every single one of these books, the fun is in the resistance, right?
Yeah.
Well, try that with, you know, in a dynamic and see how far that gets you. If you're
Right.
just it's a completely
Or
unrealistic.
or it's tried with someone who doesn't know at all what that is, what's going on, how to handle it, right? And then they get triggered. They're all fucking emotional. What the fuck's wrong with you? And now it's like this clusterfuck. And you're
Yeah,
like, that didn't happen in the novel.
right.
That's not how it went.
Well, and thing is, like, he didn't just take it. Well, what if he had? What if you had pushed his edge so far, he's just like, "Oh, yeah," and, that's called rape,
Right.
um, which is a whole,
Or it just beat you, right?
yeah, or
It's
just
like,
be
oh, do you want to, and then just like backhanded, like with
yeah,
rings on, you know?
mhm,
And then it's like, oh, that wasn't in the story. It's not supposed to go down like that.
right, yeah, and now you're gonna live with that forever, so,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
don't recommend.
Yeah.
You're not finding whatever it is that you yeah, that's something that I wish people knew. I wish
Right.
people were able to, and that's why, again, I think community is so important. If I can, dark romance is great. That's not real life.
No,
Know that. You're messing around with people's emotions and you don't, it's to fuck around and find out. Um, and it could be extremely dangerous. And then
yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
really what you're looking for, that awesome ending, right? Where they actually do work it out, and then they have this soul searing, awesome, amazing, just burn the world down for you, obsessive, whatever life. And it's like, you can actually have a form of that
Mhm.
heat and that intensity and that freaking desire and just that hotness. Absolutely 100% is there. It just takes a little bit more work to actually, when a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to do any, well, I'm like, okay, well, you're saying yourself are being hurt by
Sure.
doing, and you're not getting all the good benefits that come from having, you know, that deeper relationship with a person, you know.
Hmm.
A lot of people just don't
Yeah, I
want to
think
be.
I mentioned this like in our previous interview that like I don't play.
Mm-hmm,
I do not play. It's
mm-hmm,
just it's not fulfilling for me.
mm-hmm,
Like it kind of feels like I'm eating like wax fruit or something,
mm-hmm,
right? Because I'm not in it for the stuff. Like I'm not in it for the floggers. Like I love that stuff. I love vinyl. I love rope. Love all the stuff, right? But I'm not in it for that,
mm-hmm.
right? And perhaps I'm not like perhaps none of that's a kink for me,
Yeah,
right? What's a kink for me is like the mind,
yeah,
the heart, the spirit, the core, the shadows, the demons. Like I want to see all the like that's my kink. And you
yeah.
can't get there with play.
Mm-hmm.
Just like meeting for an hour, like I'm not really going to get an intimate connection with that or exposure to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It takes years.
Years.
Yeah.
I would say that, that deeper soul connection, that um the polarity, the shadow work, or living with our darkness, being in relationship with it and other people, and with your partner, that deeper aspect, that's really what we're looking for. I mean, if you really are honest with people. But like the BDSM is like aesthetics that reinforce it. So I mean,
Sure.
you have to have that core of your spiritual, like soul part of this. Um, and then everything else just like reinforces it and makes it better.
Oh,
All
of
the
course. Yeah, the
knowledge,
rituals, the rules, like all of that stuff. Yep.
that's really just, if you don't have, that core center of yourself, if you don't have that deeper aspect of yourself, then it's only just floggers and rope and all that stuff. And it's fun and it's sexy, but you never go deeper. You never find the other stuff. And it means less. That's it. That core self gives all that other stuff meaning, and symbolism, and um, yeah, it's what you pour your presence into.
Yeah, it certainly does. Like there's a difference between like hooking up with a girl and
Mm-hmm,
I'm like, here, put this, leather collar around your neck. Right. And like that's fun. It's cute, it's erotic, right? Great,
mm-hmm,
but it pales in comparison to like coming into into physical proximity. She immediately just do down onto her knees, eyes cast down. And I say, go get your collar. And she
mm-hmm,
gets up properly, like with the proper sort of protocol of like how to rise, how to turn, how to walk, goes to the special carved wooden box, turns around, brings it back onto the knees, opens it, presents it,
mm-hmm.
right? And as like an offering, because you can't just like grab it and throw it on, you know? And then it turns into this whole thing. Then it's putting it on. And now that's like, this is now this transition. It's like, okay, now we're stepping into this little world within this other world,
Mm-hmm.
and we're signifying it now.
Um,
And
yeah,
now it turns into this whole other thing, right? It's not
everything
just
so much
like it
more.
is just a piece of leather, but it's not just a piece of leather, right?
Mm,
It's this, and frankly, it could be anything,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
It could be like go put on your special slippers, you know, and it could carry the same exact weight,
mm-hmm.
right? It's just what we've come to ritualize and symbolize,
Yeah.
um, because I don't know, maybe somebody doesn't have a long enough neck for a collar, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter, right? It's just like what's been chosen as that symbol as
Yeah.
like of transformation. But that's again like kind of what you're getting at, where the simple can become meaningful, the mundane
Mm-hmm.
can become important.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Mhm.
is, like everything has meaning because now you've given everything meaning.
Yeah.
Just that presence, and pouring yourself into like an act of care, of it could be getting, master a Tylenol. And it's like you're relieving his pain. You're doing
Right.
this thing, so you're allowing them to sit for just a moment longer. The water from that is gonna like if you're running through to-do lists and you're whatever, go get your own Tylenol. It's like,
Oh yeah,
uh,
like, oh yeah, it's right there on the shelf.
yeah, it's right
Yeah,
there.
right.
Just,
But even
yeah,
just simple things like hand gestures,
here.
right?
Mhm,
Where we're in a certain place and give a certain hand gesture and it means a certain thing. Maybe it's too crowded, maybe it's too noisy, but
mhm,
that means go do this, right?
yeah.
Or it means like I can see you slouching, sit up straight, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And it just transforms, right? It could be a sound, right? It could be like it's like, oh, sir's wearing that ring today. I
mhm,
know what that means, right? And
mhm,
it could be like a strong emotional meaning. It could be like a memory that he wants you to think about, something to remember, whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's just there's so much creativity. There's so many like wide variables. It's
mhm,
almost limitless
mhm,
of like how one can create within this lifestyle to
yeah,
what you said, reinforce the
mhm,
relating
mhm,
and like I just like if the people are just doing it right with the right spirit into it, there's really not downsides to it.
yeah. I mean, the vanilla world can learn a lot from the kink community.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much stuff that's just transparent or transferable that would make our lives so much nicer in relation with people we care about. You
Mhm.
know, I tell them, of course I'll get that for you. I'd love to.
Yeah.
Instead of
I encourage my vanilla friends, like husbands, to spank their wives,
yeah,
and they're like,
just clear your mind.
"What?" And like, "Dude, just talk about it. Try it like a couple of times throughout the week, and then just come back together, talk about it again, and let me hear what you have to say."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It like just something as simple as that. Like even like the DD community, right?
Mm-hmm.
For those like that's the domestic discipline for those who don't know. Like that's an offshoot of the kink community. They just kind of like whittle it down to like, forget all that stuff. We just want to spank.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, they're
But
like
it's whatever
purists.
you make it. That's what's great about this. There are
Yeah.
really no rules to this thing. There's a framework, but it's like, and there's, consent and all that stuff. But I mean, there's no rules to this. You could do whatever you want. You can make it whatever you want.
Mhm.
You know, uh, what I am as a slave can mean something completely different to somebody else, and in their relationship and what works for them.
Mhm.
And their little rituals are going to be completely different because they have a different history and a different past and different needs. I've seen some couples that I remember this one couple that, I mean, it looked like they had a psychic connection because
Mhm.
almost all of their signals were nonverbal. They knew each other, and that's kind of what worked for them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
is that, yeah, and I think when had a hearing, had some hearing loss. So it formed out of a reason.
Sure.
But so it was almost like sign language, and it was where my eyes move. She knew exactly what he needed and what he wanted, just by him, I didn't even see what she was seeing. It
Right.
was subtle, but they knew each other. I think they were 20 years they were together,
Wow.
and it was like it just worked for them. She knew exactly what he wanted to eat, when he wanted to eat it, and he knew everything about her down to like telling her to go to the bathroom. Like he can just tell by the way she's, or maybe it just had been 4 hours. Who knows what their
Mhm.
language was like in their little world. But, you could see him and she would get up, go to the
Right.
bathroom, come
So
back.
just yeah, just being able to read each other on a very subtle level.
It
Yeah.
was great. It was one of the sexiest
Mhm.
things I've ever seen. I'm like, "How do I do that?" And she was like, "Be with somebody for 20 years," you
Yeah.
know?
And talk a lot.
What?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I want to just ask a couple more questions before we wrap up. So just about like submissives, what would you like you know, I guess the next generation of submissives coming up to understand that
Mhm.
maybe you had to go through the hard way?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's a whole different world now than it was 30 years ago when I got started in this. Had to, again, learned all sorts of lessons about myself, became more, I think I would tell them, you're going to be more comfortable with yourself over time.
Mm.
And the more you can let go of the narratives and the stories that you've been told already, um, yeah, none of none of what you've learned growing up is really true to your soul.
Mhm.
You know, that is up to you to find out who you are. And the only way you can do that is stop listening to everybody else and telling you know, um, other people are going to tell you you're all sorts of things. Certainly that you don't need a man. Certainly that you don't, you know, whatever it is that you're kind of carrying around with you already as a young person. It's like, that's hard enough. Just go try stuff you like. Again, there's no rules to this thing. You know,
Mhm.
find people who have more experience in this than you do, and find a bunch of those people, because that's my experience is not somebody else's. It's not somebody else's. I know that people in this community for a long time. That's we make mistakes all the time. We change our opinions all the time.
Mhm.
Something that was true for me 2 years ago isn't true for me at all now. Or maybe I've tried it and I'm like, oh, you know, okay, maybe I would put that on the shelf and try it later or something. But maybe my life is different now where that kind of a scenario wouldn't work. It just changes and it's fluid all the time. So just try it. Make sure it's safe first. Get some reference, whatever it is. Get an opinion of that you're not just nose diving into a dark romance novel that's real or something like that. There are ways to be able to make it so where you have less, because this is inherently risky. It just is. You know, you're probably going to meet a few people first and have some experiences. Maybe some of them are less than good, but you learn some stuff along the way, until you find that thing that's that soul deep, crack your heart wide open, you know, thing that we're talking about. That's 5 steps in, you know,
Mhm.
and uh, so there are ways to be able to safeguard yourself from, you know, some of the emotional and uh, and physical risk that you're inherently putting yourself in harm's way of.
Mhm.
Because again, it's just anybody can call themselves a dom or a submissive without doing some of the deeper work. So, um, yeah, educate yourself. You know, that's what, again, we didn't have the resources back then. You know, there weren't as many books. Now there's just, you have
There's
never,
tons.
human history had more information at your fingertips than you do right now. There's really no excuse.
And that's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Yeah.
I'm sure you've over the years, say, gotten some books off of
Mhm.
Amazon that were like, "Oh, this sounds sensible." And you're like looking through it like, "I just wasted my money. This is a load of crap." Some of
Mhm.
this is actually bad advice, or
Right.
some of this is no advice at all that I could have just looked up on the internet for free, and this
Yeah.
person charged me $9.95. Uh, there's
That's
a lot of, like, crap that's out there, but there's also opportunity for really great stuff.
right.
Mhm.
Ask ChatGPT. What are the best, most scientifically like world-renowned books that is the best advice I can give? And you can put it in all of your situation and what you know so far. Match me up with the best, most cited, most whatever books available, and then you can reduce the chance again that you're reading a bunch
Mhm.
of. You know,
Yeah.
I just read. Give me the top 3 books. You know, fundamental books that I should read on polarity. You know,
Mhm.
and hold up. These are the cornerstones. Read this, and then after that, I'll give you 10 more suggestions. You know, and these are highly renowned, books that most people point to. You know, so the
Yeah, I
light.
think I think one of the you briefly skipped over the word and you said mistakes.
Mhm,
And I think that's good advice for new submissives or this next generation of submissives as well as DOMs, is
mhm.
that it's all right to make mistakes and that you're going to make mistakes.
Oh, you're going.
Um, yeah, and because so I think this is particularly poignant for this generation, right?
Mhm,
Which is like the internet generation,
mhm.
because increasingly as it's become part of normal life, so has one's image or the perception of one's image online. And there's this great fear of making a mistake, being seen as foolish, being seen as a loser, being seen as something negative. And so there's this great fear of also making a mistake. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's this highly performative nature of
Mm-hmm.
like I need to like look great, show up great, show up perfect. And that really is that's a problem waiting, right? That's a problem hiding.
Yeah.
Because like eventually you're gonna come up to a situation where like your performance falls flat.
Oh
And
yeah.
or it's not gonna be suitable. Excuse me,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be suitable for the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's where like education comes into play. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for a new dom to fuck up.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's during practices that are not endangering someone else.
Yeah.
You're not biting off more than you can chew.
Mm-hmm.
But mistakes in judgment, mistakes in communication, those are
Mm-hmm.
really the biggest mistakes that are going to happen. Is
Yeah.
mistakes in communication.
Well, and submissives again think that DOMs are just these all-knowing, all-powerful, and when you see them human, when you see them, they skip over something, they miss, they get busy too. They have a history that they're bringing into this, and so that I think for dominance, especially that fear of being called out, being seen as weak, being seen as not as capable as they would like to be, not being respected,
Mhm.
is a huge one. So something submissives can do, especially when you're in a relationship, is to trust that they're going to make mistakes, and let that be okay. Um, there's a situation where like they're absolutely going to make a mistake. They're absolutely going to misread something. And so to be able to say to another human being, like, I trust you,
Mhm.
you've got this. It's going to be
Yeah.
okay. And
And
so
then
that,
on the other side to come back and say, I apologize. I misread that situation. I guided it wrong, and I
mm-hmm,
take accountability for that.
mm-hmm,
I'm sorry that harmed you in whatever way that it did.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've had, it's funny, you may not be knowing that you're doing anything wrong. And instead of grabbing those reins back as a submissive, then just like hey, I trust you to handle this situation. Maybe they didn't even know that they did anything wrong, but it's like, oh well, they you pointed it out without pointing it out, but they know that okay, and now like address the situation, and they were not called out on it. You didn't grab the reins back. You've already told them you've trust them, so they're like, you've given them 10 steps ahead instead of pulling them down, you
Mhm.
know? So it's just little things like that, which is, yes, it's a dominant and submissive thing, but it's also imagine if you ran this is what I'm talking about, like it flows through my whole life. I lead my team like that. You know what I mean? You know, that kind of like deference just to another human being is so it's touching. This is what you kind of seek in these relationships. It's that deeper intimacy with people.
For sure.
You know,
I want
it's
to answer this question here um, by Daniel Victor. He says, "Hey guys, what would you say is the best way to discern if an information and knowledge is worth paying for versus something you can look up online for free?"
mm, that's an interesting. Okay, like Substack is a really good example of that. Sometimes you're supporting a certain um I don't want to say artist necessarily, but like, in Substack, if you find a really good resource, it's like it's worth paying the yearly subscription that supports their work.
Mhm.
It's the same thing with like,
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. So you're talking about like in terms of supporting, you just have the urge to support what they're doing. Yeah.
yeah, there's lots of things for free. There's some things that these same writers that maybe you would want that have really, really good information. Yeah, you could get it online for free, but also maybe buy the book, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Maybe you want to support this person because they're putting effort into it. Sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, there are absolutely like workshops and things like that that are complete crap. So, I mean, again, once you're sorting through it all, like, there are certain people who lead this stuff that I would absolutely pay full price for their stuff because they've earned it, as a person who does this for a living.
Right.
Um, and there's some stuff that you can just talk to ChatGPT about. You know?
Well, he's asking about discerning. He's like, what's the best way to discern? So he's really asking how to discern. And I would say trust your gut and your principles. Okay. So let's say you come like I've heard about this. There's this author, I can't remember his name, but he's got some books out for sale. And people, like the books are really popular.
Mhm.
And you could, Daniel, you could be like, oh, look at that book on BDSM. I'm going to go buy this book. But your principle perhaps is like, I don't want to support people who are criminals. I don't want to support people who are
Mhm.
offenders. I don't want to support people who, just have a background or a set of behaviors or beliefs that I don't believe in.
Mhm.
So before purchasing, you decide to do research on this person, and you
Yeah.
start digging and digging, and then you're like, oh, so this he's well known, but he's not well respected.
Mhm.
And I don't think I want to support this person by buying their book. So
Mhm.
so I think that a good way to discern is to use two tools, which is just your instinct, your gut, and then also your principles of like what you think is right and wrong, and whether you think that the person that you say you are going to pay something for, say a book, a course, coaching, what have you, that it's in alignment with what you believe in as what is
Mhm.
right and true. So I think that would be the
Yeah.
helpful thing for you. I hope that answered your question, Daniel.
Mhm.
So one last question here for you, Ava, before I let you go. What's in the future for you and the House of Three Rivers?
Yeah. Um, well, gosh, I'd love to see it, let's say 5 years into the future or however long that is. I've got a good solid group of folks again who are, leaders in the community. They're teaching their own classes, they're doing workshops. There's a baseline level of self-awareness and, emotional intelligence amongst them. We probably worked out some conflict by that time. But, public events, I'd like to see a larger community around us. But one of the things that's important to me is a lot of times houses have been private and hard to find. And that's for a reason because there had to be vetting. There had to be, you know, there's a safety and there's a fear of outing and there's a
Hmm.
fear of, so one of the things that I'd like to see is this be more public and have more people who have who don't need to be in the shadows of this, who are able to speak about what they care about and what they're passionate about openly in front of any group of people. Um, and I'd like it to be, it's again hard to get in. So I don't have to worry about the vetting quite so much. You've already vetted your own self, and been vetted by the time you actually get to go through the ceremony of being, a member, being inducted. And so, and ultimately, I'd like this to be able to run in such a way so where it can be modeled and replicated and scaled. This should be um, a nationwide thing. This should be able to be copied and, brought into other communities that need it. So that's my bigger vision for this is to be able to build something solid enough so where it can be scaled.
Mm,
Because I think again, a lot of people need, have resources and workshops and things like that do go that 5 extra step and that do go deeper, and that are useful and practical and helpful for people along their path. And I think that there's a real need for that. So and all sorts of
yeah.
different
It
ways.
sounds to me like you're wanting to create like a base skeleton
Mm-hmm.
that can be, say, applied to like other houses or other groups or other people, like just individuals, and they say, okay, I can take this skeleton of of relating, right?
Mhm.
And then customize that,
Mhm.
right? Where there's just but there's the fundamental foundational understandings that like have to be in place and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it's a tough one. I'd be happy to talk with you about it, like,
Mhm.
offline. Um, because it's like similar stuff that I work on, and it's tough. Because in my own like academy, like there is a structure, like a base structure that's like, oh, we can't get to that until we do this. And
Yeah.
there's like very specific things we have to build and work through
Mhm.
in order to have the proper foundation. That skeleton has to be built first,
Right.
before applying the musculature and tendons and all that.
Just
Well,
think
that sounds awesome.
think
I really am impressed by building the house out, and I look forward to hearing where it goes and what you do with it. And like I said, I really wouldn't mind flying out your way and paying the house a visit, seeing what's
yeah,
up.
amazing.
Cool. All right. Well, Ava, thank you for joining me here tonight. It was a great conversation. Loved every minute of it, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. And
Mhm.
so, just really quick, uh, I want to tell people, if people wanted to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Probably through Substack is the
Okay.
easiest way. It's more widely I mean, I'm on FET. Same name, Ava Chanel. House at Three Rivers is getting a website, but right now,
Great.
of course, it lives on FET, connected to my profile. Um, but the widest audience, easiest, and probably what you wanted, most of my writing, most of my deeper thought is on Substack. You wanna be able to learn about me, learn about the house, learn about my philosophy, the kind
Mhm.
of I think about. Substack is the way to go. So it's just Ava Chanel,
Right.
.substack.com.
And that's AVACHAANEL.
Yes.
Ava
Hmm.
Chanel,
Hmm.
Substack. Awesome. So yeah, Peggy, if you're still listening, you can contact Ava there, or I'll
Hmm.
just shoot you an email. I don't know if you're still watching. But yeah, great, cool. And again, thanks for joining me, and thank you everyone for joining us here on the stream. And we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, everybody.